Hello, we are, welcome, it's Monday morning, and we're going to look at easing curves today. So there was a couple of questions last week that came in about easing curves and how to edit them and things like this, and we're going to cover a couple of the different little basics about what is an easing curve, how do you use it for motion, and then how can you apply it to properties as well, and then we'll do a little challenge at the end, okay? So let's get over to Flow and have a look at the first thing. So here we have 5 squares, and what we want to do is we want to move them from one side of the artboard to the other, or one side of the scene to the other. So what I'm going to do is I've already set up my timeline so that it's 2 seconds long. I'm going to I'm going to select all of these, and we're going to change the X position to 450. All right, so now we have our animations, and if I hit play, that's what happens. Okay, so 2-second animation. And what also happens here is we create all these animations down on the timeline. In the default version, the default easing curve that pops up between them is this one right here. Ease in, ease out. Now, what I mean by default is we just pick one whenever you're creating something. We just pick one and set it because you need to have an easing curve. And what the easing curve actually does is it helps calculate the motion between 2 different states, right? So this is a state 1, or this is the state 2, and this is the state 1. And so the easing curve is the motion that it takes to get between those 2 things. Although it isn't just limited to motion, but in this case, it's the motion that gets between those 2 different states. Now there are lots of different easing curves. Okay, so this is the easing curve panel, and you can see that there's a bunch of these easing curves down here. So let's have a look at one that's a little bit different. So I'm going to select this curve right here by clicking on it, and that's for R1. And I'm going to make this one a quart. Okay, so now let's have a look at the motion between those. It moves a little bit slower at the beginning, a little bit faster in the middle, and then a little bit slower at the end, but the entire duration of the animation is the same. So they get to the same place at the same time. That is the first one and the second one. And so there's all these variations on that. And then you get up to this bounce back one. Ease in, ease out, back. So let's apply that to R3. So I'm going to select that again. See, its standard easing curve is ease in, out. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on back. And there you go. So what that does is it kind of moves back a little bit in each direction before, at the beginning and the end of the animation. So this is the one we're looking at right here. Now there are 2 other kinds of steps. So these ones are smooth easing. So they have, essentially they have an algorithm or calculation that defines the motion between these 2 key values. And there are 2 different types on top of that. So the other one, instead of having some sort of algorithm, is just linear. Okay, this is just a straight up, we're going to move at the exact same pace between the left and the right key value. There you go. So it moves at a constant rate, and that's going to be this one right here. Constant rate. And then the last one, the last concept for an easing curve are steps. And this is what steps look like. So we have a step right, a step middle, and a step left. Now what those mean are immediate changes, and there's going to either be an immediate change at the left key value, an immediate change in the middle between 2 key values, or an immediate change at the right side of the 2 key values. So let's start with right, and we're going to hit play. Now this one doesn't move until it gets to the right hand key value. See right here? It stays in the same position right till there. Done. If this one were middle, it's going to snap right in the middle of the animation. Bam. and if it were at the left side, okay, we're going to go back here. Now we haven't started playing it yet because we need to be able to see this position, but it's just going to start at the left hand key value, like that. So there's these three different types of key values. Now we're not going to go, now there is also like, you can go and you can create your own custom key values or your own custom curves, but we'll get to that in a separate tutorial or webcast, whatever we're doing here. All right, okay, now you can apply these to motion. So let's have a look at what it looks like when you're going to apply them to motion. Okay, so now I have essentially I've created this animation here with three different layers. So I'm just going to hide two of them. There's a combined one, which is going to be purple. There is a vertical motion one that is blue, and a horizontal motion one that's pink. So as we looked before in the previous timeline, this is going to have a linear horizontal motion. So you can see down here that if I select horizontal motion and I open that up, there is an X track, and it is actually, sorry, it's not linear, it's an ease in, ease out. Okay, so I'm just moving something from the left to the right like we did in the last timeline. Now this one, the vertical motion, okay, it's going to move up and then come back down. Okay, so let's press play. Just going to go up and down. And the last animation takes those two ideas. And one thing before we move on is that when you do the vertical motion, it actually has an extra key value compared to the horizontal one, because it goes up to a point and then it comes back down. So it goes up to right here. I'm selecting this key value in the middle. This is 0.5, and it goes up to 50, and it comes all the way back down to what that should be over here. When I select that one, is 250. Okay, so it's going up and coming down. There's three key values. If you combine those three key values, or those two different motions, you're going to get something like that. Now let's move the combined one up above everything else. So all I did was I dragged this layer above, and that drags it above on here. So now we're going to be able to see it over top. And let's slow that down just a little bit. I'm going to click the speed here. I could extend the timeline to 2 seconds, or I can slow it down, the playback, like that. So it's combining the horizontal and the vertical motions, just like this. Okay, so let's turn this off, and I want to look at how you can get different kinds of motion and different kinds of motion effects by changing the key values, or sorry, changing the easing curves of an animation. So one, let's change what we're looking at actually. Sorry, we turn on combined, turn that off. So what we're looking at when we look at this one is linear motions for both the horizontal and the vertical. And what that ends up actually making visually is a triangle, okay? Or some sort of pyramid. It goes up and then down. But at the same pace, then it's going to go up in a straight line and down in a straight line, okay? Let's just loop that and have a look. We can actually move this down, make that a little bit bigger for you guys. And slash, here we go. Okay. I'm just checking to see if there's any questions so far. There aren't, which is great. And so we're just going to keep going. Okay, so that gives us a nice little motion. Now, if we were to change, for instance, oh, that's my dog. My dog's in the webcast today. Go on, Rizzo. He wanted to get out of here. He was not enjoying the animation cast. Okay. If we change the easing curves for the Y motion, this whole motion is going to change. So I'm going to select both key values, and then I'm going to go up into the corner here, and I'm going to click this right here. And that's going to select all of the easing curves that are to the right of each of those key values. There's only two, so it does both. I'm going to change them both to easing in and easing out like that. And now, you see, we get this like curvy kind of wave effect. If we wanted to say split these up by saying one is ease in and one is ease out, we're going to get that, and it's going to be more of a peak in the middle rather than like a nice sine wave. If we switch them, this one is out and this one is in, and hit play, it's starting to be more of an arc. And if we used, instead of the easing, we used circular, and this is going to be circular in, and this one is circular out. We're going to get that motion. Okay, so let's slow that down a little bit. And now we're not looping anymore, so we can just see the beginning and the end states. All right. And so you can go around and you can play, but you can get lots of different kinds of motion effects by just playing with the easing curves of your animations. All right. If we wanted to say back out, you can even combine different ones. There you go. Gets a little bit of a J at the bottom here. And you can even have steps as well. Boom. And a nice drop off. Okay. So I want to now look at, so we want to take a couple of those different ideas of applying easing curves to motion. And I want to show how you can apply these to properties as well, because easing curves, they're not just about motion, even though it's easiest to see them by looking at motion, like things moving across the screen, but you can actually apply them to properties as well. And the animation that we're going to create is this one. Let's play that back at normal speed and hit play. It's going to be this one. And we're going to use easing curves. Specifically, we're going to use step curves to animate the opacity of a layer. All right. So we have 5 layers. And what we actually want to do is we want to animate them. We want to animate their opacities coming in and coming out. Okay, so what you might do as a beginner, you might say, oh, well, I want a really, really fast animation. I want it to just snap on and then snap off. So you might think about something like this. Like if I'm going to have these all animate in and out, what we would do is at the beginning, we would have them be 0. Okay, so this is just animating in slowly. And then you might take that animation and bring it all the way back. And then what you can do is you can say the start of that animation is going to be, or all those keyframes is going to be 0.01. And you have them like that, like a super fast animation. Okay. And when you hit play, they're on. If you go back to the beginning, they're off, and then they're on. And then you might say something like, let's just drag it a little bit further along, like if you wanted it to just switch on at 0.51 or 0.5, like this, and then they're all on. Okay. So I'm using the easing curve to just, I'm not actually doing anything with the easing curves, I'm just making the animation so short that it appears that it snaps on. Okay. But this really isn't what you want to do. I mean, you can do it, but it's actually easier to use that principle of step animations for this animation property, or this opacity property. So let's just get rid of all of these animations here. We're going to turn on relative mode. We're going to make everything 0 to start because we want things to switch on and then switch off. And right in the middle, we are going to, right in the middle of our animation, because it's 2 seconds long, so I'm placing the playhead here at 1. We're going to turn everything on. And that's just going to create our basic set of animations for us. So they animate in and they animate out. Now what I want is I want them to snap in and snap off. So I'm going to select all of those key values. Again, I'm going to click here and I'm going to turn them to step rights. So what that's going to do is it's going to take a second, everything's going to snap on, and then one more second, and it's going to snap off. On, off, on, off. So we're going to use the step property to now create that effect, one or the other, or one after the other. And we have a 2-second animation, and so we have 5 layers. So we want these animations to be a fifth of that animation long, and then we're going to distribute them. So I'm going to start dragging and pressing shift at the same time, and that's going to compress the animation, and I'm going to make it 0.4 seconds, which is 1/5 of our animation time. And I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to move this one out like that, and I'm going to move this one out like that. And actually what we want to see is we want the first one to be on to begin with. So we actually can delete this key value right here. And now we have it on to start. Okay, so it's going to switch off, and there we have our animation. Now what I want to do is I just want to stretch it out to the 2 seconds. There's 2 ways I could do this. The easiest way is to just select all of these key values, and then here I say the duration is going to be 2 seconds long, and that's going to scale my entire animation up so it fits into my timeline. And now we have our animation. There we go. But the one thing that I don't like about this is that it goes dark here, or it goes, we don't need this. We want it to look like this is the last frame is green. So what we're going to do is the same trick as the beginning. Instead of deleting the first key value that we did on R0, we're going to delete the last one. And again, we're going to select all of them. I can just click on the timeline anywhere, and I'm going to press Command A. And here's the second way that you can scale an animation. If you have a really simple animation, what you can do is you can do a couple things like this. I know that my animation ends at 1.6. So I'm going to say that my entire timeline is 1.6, and I'm going to clip it. So that's going to cut off some of the time from the end of the animation. And now I'm going to go back here and I'm going to press 2. It's going to be 2 seconds long, and I'm going to scale up my animation. So it's going to scale the entire timeline. Okay, so the first trick we did is we scaled just the selected layers, and now we scaled the timeline. So now we have the effect that we're going for, and there we go. So if we loop it, now we have this looping animation. Did I get that wrong? 1, that should be off like that, and that should be on. So oh yeah, so I did get this R4 animation wrong. So I'm just going to reverse that, and I'm going to move it back into position. So it should turn on. I had deleted the wrong key value, and now what we actually want is we want it to turn on at this point. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to option drag this key value all the way to the beginning, and we're going to say we're going to turn it on right, and this one is going to be a right as well. Okay, so that should be off the entire time, and then snap on right at this point, and then be on, and then snap off at this point. What am I doing wrong here? I should have done something a little bit different. So let's do that. Oh, let's undo. Actually, we're going to keep that. Oh, no. Let's say we are going to do this. We're going to rebuild this animation just a little bit. And, well, sometimes you get stuff wrong. That's okay. We're going to move that out to 1.5. Let's just look to see if that's the effect that we wanted. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's what I wanted. And now we're going to take that timeline and we are going to make it 2 seconds long, and we're going to scale it back. We're going to scale it back to the right duration. Okay. That's the effect I was looking for. Okay, great. So we're using step functions. All right, we're using step functions to create that animation like it appears that this bar is moving across the screen. Okay. If we wanted to, we could select all of those and we could apply different easing curves to them. Okay, so let's say we had linear on all of them. Now what is that going to look like? It's going to look like that thing fades from one to the other rather than just stepping across, and it changes the appearance of that motion, or that it changes the appearance of the aesthetic. We can do a bit of a back. That's not going to do much to us because opacity can't be any lower than 0 and it can't be any higher than 1. So the back isn't going to do anything, but maybe circular is going to do something. Okay, different aesthetic based on the easing curves. So here, okay, different aesthetics. But let's go back to steps. And we have that animation all complete. So now what I would like you to try and do is think about how you can do this animation, okay, this exact animation, but with one layer. All right. And if you can figure that out, let me know. Send a link to us on the Slack channel, and I'll show you how to do this with one layer tomorrow. And the answer is actually a little bit earlier on in the cast. And so we're going to have, I'm going to post the video just right after this. And so you'll be able to go back if you want, you can go back and have a look at the other steps that we did beforehand. Okay. And I'll see you tomorrow. All right. Talk to you soon.